August 23rd, 2022. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Certainly. Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez, not yet present. Councilmember Sin.
Here.
Councilmember Friedman.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Harmon, not yet present. Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez.
Present.
Councilmember Jordan.
Here.
And Mayor Rouse.
Here. Very good. Ms. Burke, are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes, Mayor Rouse.
Okay. And do we have public comments, speaker slips?
We do not have any general public comment.
Okay,
speakers.
very good. And do we have anyone online that wants general public comment?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, very good. In that case, we'll move to the consent calendar. We have some items to read.
Yes, we do. Item 2, Amendment 1 of License Agreement with Santa Barbara Youth Sailing Foundation to increase premises and change the monthly license rate. Ordinance adoption. Recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the council of the city of Santa Barbara approving and authorizing the waterfront director to execute Amendment 1 to lease agreement number 26738 with Santa Barbara Youth Sailing Foundation, increasing the premises, changing the monthly license rate, and including a utility fee, commencing upon the effective date for the enabling ordinance. Item 3, adoption of affordability covenant modification for the Lighthouse Apartments property located at 1502 to 1522 San Pasqual. Ordinance adoption. Recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the council of the city of Santa Barbara approving a First Amendment to restated affordability control covenant imposed on real property with the Turner Foundation since 1958 for property located at 1502 through 1522 San Pasqual Street and authorizing the community development director to execute such amendment. Item 4, grant from the California State Library for Adult Education and Resource Navigation Services, resolution. Recommendation that Council A adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 22059, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2023 to provide resource navigation services funded by the California State Library, and B, accept the California State Library grant. Item 5, authorization to amend legal services agreement with Ballard, Rosenberg, Culper, and Savitt, LLP for special counsel services, resolution contract. Recommendation that Council A authorize the city attorney to execute an amendment to the legal services agreement with Ballard, Rosenberg, Culper, and Savitt, LLP to increase the not-to-exceed amount by $32,250 for total contract authority of $232,250. And B, adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 22059, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2023 to increase the contract amount for special counsel services regarding human resources and employment matters. Item 6, waive penalties for business license tax remittances during the transition to the new system, resolution. Recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only a resolution authorizing the finance director to waive penalties for business license tax remittances from January 2023 through March 2023. Item 7, approval of the fiscal year 2022 through 2023 agreement for operation of a countywide library system and appropriation of county per capita funds, resolution contract. Recommendation that Council A approve and authorize the city administrator to execute the fiscal year 2022-2023 agreement for operation of a countywide library system between the County of Santa Barbara and the City of Santa Barbara for the operation of libraries belonging to the countywide library system. And B, adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 22059, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2023 for county per capita funds for the operation of library services. And that is all that needs to be read.
Thank you. Does anyone from council need to pull an item from consent? Mr. Gutierrez.
I have a question for the city attorney.
Which item, please?
I don't have the number, but it's the one that pertains to TV Santa Barbara.
Item 10.
Just to be clear, since I was a former employee,
Wait, we need to read the item to discuss it.
Madam Clerk, which item is that? 10?
Ms. Kinnick, that is item 10, and I'll just read the subject into the
Oh, right,
record real
correct.
quick.
I've got it, yeah, thank you.
And that's a grant agreement with South Coast Community Media Access Center, DBA TV Santa Barbara.
Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Gutierrez.
my question is, since I was a former employee, should I abstain from voting on that item, or has enough time passed where it's not a conflict?
I don't know, the how long ago you were employed. Generally, we don't like to make these kind of determinations, on the spot, so the better recommendation is to recuse if there's any question.
Okay.
When we'll give you a more formal opinion after the meeting.
Okay, just to be safe, I will recuse from that item specifically.
And Madam Attorney, does Mr. Gutierrez need to leave the room for the separate vote or not?
Well, you're going to want to take this item separately
Right.
as a vote, so yes, he would want to recuse from the dais,
Okay,
or
very good.
remove himself from the dais for that.
And did
vote
Mr.
on the
Jordan
rest
give a
of the-
comment, or- Oh, okay. All right, so we will take that item separately. So if you
So-
could excuse us for a minute there, Mr. Gutierrez, and we
You
will
want to do
take.
10 first? Okay, so I'll move consent item 10.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Jordan, seconded by one of you guys, whoever that was. There we go. Okay, we have to Ms. Harmon. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, this is a vote for item 10 alone, motion by Jordan, seconded by Friedman. Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez not present. Councilmember Friedman.
Yes.
Councilmember Sneddon.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Harmon.
Yes.
Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez has recused. Councilmember Jordan
Yes.
and Mayor Rouse.
Aye. Okay, very good. We'll bring in Mr. Gutierrez, and
So
I'll entertain a motion for the rest of the balance of the consent calendar.
I'll move the rest of the consent calendar.
Moved by Jordan,
Second.
seconded by Harmon. And Madam Clerk, if you would,
Very
please.
good. This is a motion by Councilmember Jordan, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Harmon for the balance of the consent calendar, which is items 1 through 9 and 11 through 13. Councilmember Friedman.
Yes.
Councilmember Sneddon.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Harmon.
Yes.
Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez.
Aye.
Councilmember Jordan.
Yes.
Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez not present. Mayor Russ.
Aye.
Very good.
Very good, thank you. Concludes the consent calendar. May we have a report from the Finance Committee? Mr. Friedman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Today, the Finance Committee, we had the first department presentation as part of the Fiscal Sustainability Initiative, and that was the Community Development Department. Went over their budget, went over their mandated services, discretionary services, and then we had a really informative discussion. And no action was taken, but it was some good feedback for staff and for future departments that will be presenting as well. So it was a good first meeting on the department side of it.
All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to the normal agenda. Would you read the item, please, Madam Clerk?
Certainly. Item 14, subject designation of Casa de los Cuatro Vistas as a landmark resolution, and the recommendation is that council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara designating Casa de los Cuatro Vistas at 1201 Las Alturas Road as a landmark.
All right, very good. We'll take the staff presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Ellen Kokinda, and wait, pardon me if I need to pull up the rookie mistake.
That's weird.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Ellen Kokinda. I'm the Design Review and Historic Preservation Supervisor in the Planning Division. And I'm here today to present the qualifications of the Casa de Cuatro Vistas at 1201 Las Alturas Road for designation as a landmark. I do want to just acknowledge that unfortunately Nicole Hernandez, who's the architectural historian, generally would be in this seat, but she was unable to attend today. So my apologies. So the purpose of today's hearing is to review the historic and architectural significance of Casa de Cuatro Vistas and consider adopting a resolution designating the building as a city landmark. Just to give you a little background, city landmarks are among the city's most important historic resources, representing the unique history and architecture designated only by city council vote. So that's really what distinguishes landmarks, is that city council is the one to make that designation in a vote. Landmarks also are distinguished because they cannot be demolished. So demolition and any kind of inappropriate exterior alterations, landmarks protect that. And there are currently 135 landmarks in the city of Santa Barbara. The charter, the city charter, section 817A, grants the Historic Landmarks Commission the power and their duty to recommend to city council that structures be designated as a landmark. So it's one of their tasks, it's part of the creation of the Historic Landmarks Commission to do that. Similarly, the Santa Barbara Municipal Code grants the council authority to designate city landmarks based on HLC's recommendations. So there's a process to this designation. In addition, the general plan outlines policy HR 8 of the historic resources element, calls for the continued identification, documentation, and designation of individual historic resources. So it's part of our historic preservation programming throughout the city in our general plan to review these, to get the nominations and take them through the designation process. A little bit about the designation process. So we receive a nomination, and nominations are really supportive that anyone can submit a nomination. It could be from a Historic Landmarks Commission member, it can be from a property owner, or any member of the public can submit a nomination. In this case, we received a nomination from Fermina Murray, who is here today, Ms. Murray, and she is the consultant historian on behalf of the owners of the property at 1201 Las Alturas, Emmett and Jadwiga McDonough. So the nomination was received. The HLC reviews a significance report that is prepared by the architectural historian and includes the designation criteria, and the HLC is the one to provide a recommendation to you as City Council. Your role in this is to review HLC's recommendation, and if you find you're supportive of the recommendation, then you would adopt a resolution for that landmark designation. The following on the screen are the landmark significance criteria. So the Santa Barbara Municipal Code outlines the criteria that qualify a property for historic designation. First and foremost, the property must have historic integrity and meet only one of the 5 below. So these criteria mimic those of the National Register of Historic Places that focus on evidence of historic importance rather than opinion. So landmark designations are really, they're not arbitrary or subjective. These are the criteria that the Santa Barbara Municipal Code states that are the elements of evaluation. A little bit more about the property. So this is Casa de Cuatro Vistas at 1201 Las Alturas. The property is located on the top of the Riviera. The estate has 4 main features that contribute to the historic significance. The 1919 main house, the sandstone features a mid-century modern studio constructed in 1959, and then a significant trees on the property. On the left, you'll see a map showing the location of 1201 Las Alturas. You'll see it highlighted in yellow. The other properties that are shown in blue are properties that are listed on our historic resources inventory, and these properties are under Historic Landmarks Commission review for compatibility. And you'll also notice in the bottom right-hand corner of the map, there's a purple residence that is actually, it's another designated city landmark. The site plan on the right of the estate is a site plan of the estate with the main house constructed in 1919 with associated sandstone details. As I mentioned earlier, a mid-century modern studio constructed in 1959, a guest house constructed in 1965, and garage constructed in 2006, and a pagoda, and again, the significant trees sprinkled throughout the site. The city has a history of designating estates that meet the criteria for as being historic. as they contribute to our architectural repertoire in the city. And these are just two examples of different houses that have been, or their estates that have been designated. One on the left is 931 Las Alturas Road by Edwin Clark, and the one on the right is 1915 Las Tunas Road that was designed by Reginald Johnson, and these are designated historic resources. Just something important to mention that these estates sometimes aren't publicly visible or publicly accessible, but that doesn't mean that the city can't, or the city council can't designate them. So another notable example would be the Clark Estate. That's not publicly accessible on a regular basis. So just to put that in context. The architect, Carlton Winslow, and I'm going to share a little bit more about him a little bit later in the slides, but I do want to point out that the architect was extremely proud of this house and featured many of the photos of its construction in Concrete magazine, because at the time, using concrete and rebar was extremely innovative. This was a major innovation. Now we think of it as just common construction, but at the time, it was really something to put out there and to showcase as something extremely innovative. So it's helpful for us to show how much of the original building is intact and to ensure that it has that historic integrity in which it's, in order to convey its original appearance. So we carefully have reviewed these photographs to compare the existing property and find that it still conveys this appearance as the most important, most of the building is intact and very few alterations were done in a compatible manner. So in order to qualify as a historic resource, a property must retain that historic integrity. And again, some of these photo evidence just helps us to clarify that. Here's another clipping from the article in which Carlton Winslow wrote himself, where he discussed the revolutionary use of concrete versus brick or adobe. He carefully situated this one-story house to take advantage of the four views. The architect refers to Casa de Cuatro Vistas when constructed in this article, so the title is historic in and of itself, and it's not new, not something that's been applied later on. You can also see in this photograph on the right that the windows, or actually on the left, that the windows still have the iron grills over them. And here is a detail of the deeply recessed front plank door in the front. The historic photographs we have illustrate how the building has retained its historic integrity and convey its original appearance. Again, the front elevation with a deeply recessed front door and the terracotta roof, and the windows are all the same on this elevation between these two photos. And again, here's the deeply recessed door on the left and the window with the existing grills, and you can see the comparison on the right from that Concrete magazine photo. The west elevation has had some alterations, but they are compatible with the house and minor enough that the house can still convey its original appearance. And the HLC found the house still conveys its 1919 appearance. And just to make sure that the record shows what's original and what's not, the applicant had an architect prepare plans to outline the compatible alterations. You can see here the south-facing gable on the south end has had the windows widened and the arbor installed over it. And the open porch off that wing was enclosed in 1955 by the architect Peter Edwards in order to make a library. In 1960, there were minor additions on the north, this is the rear elevation that you're looking at, so pool side of the house. But you can still see that the major forms and elements that were part of the architect's original design. The Historic Significance Report, again, that was prepared by our architectural historian, and the Historic Landmarks Commission determined that the house does retain integrity so that it can be considered eligible as a historic resource. Despite the alterations, the house does retain most of its original features, so it has a high historic integrity of location, feeling, setting, design, materials, workmanship, and association, and can convey that 1919 appearance, which we keep pointing back to. So it's typical for a house to have some level of alterations, but many of the alterations are so minor that they don't really impact the overall historic resource. Okay, so in addition to retaining the historic integrity, again, it needed to meet one of the other 5 criteria. The building meets 2 of the criteria in the Santa Barbara Municipal Code. Criterion number 2, the site is associated with lives significant in Santa Barbara. Just to point out the 4 listed here, Henry Hitchcock first purchased the property and hired Carlton Winslow to design the main house. The Hitchcock family lived there from 1919 to 1928. He developed lots of land in Santa Barbara, helping grow the city, and Hitchcock Way on Upper State Street is named after him. So that's a familiar name. Ina Teresa Allison Campbell lived in the house from 1928 to 1953. Ina Campbell was a well-known philanthropist who provided funds to support Santa Barbara College and UCSB, and the Botanic Gardens in particular. She also designed much of the garden spaces at Casa de Cuatro Vistas. Her garden's most notable piece would have to be the stunning Japanese pagoda that's on site. McKinley and Frances Helm lived in the house from 1955 to 1973. McKinley Helm was nationally known art critic, collector, and writer who published 11 books. His 1941 book about the Mexican master painters, titled Mexican Painters, Rivera, Orozco, Sisqueiros, and Other Artists of the Social and Realistic School, is an important and influential book and is considered the best introduction to the art and artists of Mexico during the great artistic movements of the 1920s and 1930s. And then lastly, John E. Gillespie, 1973 to 1989. He served with great distinction as the chair of the music department at UCSB. So the property also meets criterion 3 for several reasons, and I'll go through those reasons, but again, just a reminder that criterion 3 is that it needs to embody the distinctive characteristic of a type, period, or architectural style, a method of construction, or work of a master. So first, the main house embodies the character-defining features of the Spanish colonial revival style, which this really became an important part of Santa Barbara's heritage in the 1920s, when the city deliberately transformed its architecture and look from an ordinary Western-style town into a romantic Spanish colonial revival Mediterranean-style city. This transformation was the result of a planning vision of a number of Santa Barbara citizens in the early 1920s, with the founding of the Santa Barbara Community Arts Association, which urged that the town identify its individual character and then use planning principles to develop it. The property also qualifies under criterion 3 as the main house. Again, it was designed by Carlton Winslow, FAIA, which is a fellow of the American Institutes of Architecture, became a leader in the Spanish colonial revival style. Winslow, who's seated here, was a truly creative and innovative architect in Santa Barbara, and his impact and leadership in the city made a huge impact on what our city looks like today. Of course, in addition to the many impressive residential estates on the Riviera and Montecito that he designed, downtown Santa Barbara contains an array of Winslow creations. He also led and edited the Small House Design book to help shape many affordable homes that dot the downtown, which the Historic Landmarks Commission just received a presentation on that. So even though they're smaller residences, still quite impressive. Okay, so here are just the images that you see on screen right now are just a few of Carlton Winslow's pieces that are very familiar to our city. The original entrance to the Santa Barbara Public Library on the left, designed in 1925, and then the nurses' building across from Bass Street from Cottage Hospital on the right. Going back to the estate at 1201 Las Alturas, it's also home to another architectural gem, the excellent example of mid-century modern style by Edwards and Pittman Studio, designed in 1959. This is World War II reversed the pattern of period-designed architecture popular in the early 20th century. This studio on the right demonstrates the modernist-influenced architectural style with the flat planes, the clean lines, very little ornamentation characterized both of the exteriors. And you can see the large windows was really to bring the outdoors inside. So that was quite unique at the time. Furthermore, this property has a symphony of different types of Santa Barbara sandstone stonework with some very highly crafted mason work dating from 1919. This also meets criterion number 3 because as the sandstone walls and features are distinctive characteristics of a method of construction, and these features possess high artistic value. And I'm just going to show you some of these images. Again, this was part of the plan that the McDonough's hired an architect to put together some information for the Historic Landmarks Commission review. And so you can see the photographs and a site map of the location of these different elements of sandstone features. And perhaps the most spectacular of all of these is the collection of carved stone steps and railings that lead to a large stone bench that's just nestled within a shady woods, which is just below the northwestern driveway. And then there are large piers at the entry to the main driveway. Again, all significant features. In addition, we have the significant trees on site. There are a few significant trees on the property that do contribute to the significance of the property as a whole. The live oak trees. The house was purposely situated among live oak trees, and there are many on the property. Notably, there's a live oak tree grove between the garage and the studio that contributes the idea of bringing nature into that mid-century modern studio. There's also notably a large live oak tree near the gravel driveway roundabout. And among the unique trees, there's a mature Melaleuca tree, and forgive me if I've mispronounced that, I'm guessing I have, that is next to the gravel driveway at the roundabout. And then a large Podocarpus gracilor next to the Bacoda with very ferny leaves. So it's not necessarily every tree on site, but we've identified these particular trees that contribute to the significance. Just want to point out that the boundary of this landmark designation is the entire parcel to allow for adequate review of any changes for compatibility. There are non-contributing features that are clearly noted on the plans, and they're noted because of any kind of future reference. So if there are questions in the future with any kind of redevelopment proposed or different exterior changes, we want to identify what are the contributing features and what are the non-contributing features. So that's all included in the historic significance report. Also want to point out just some other key landmark designation information. So the landmark status does not protect private views, and nor does the California Environmental Quality Act protect any private views. Our design review boards, just as a matter of course, do not consider any kind of impacts to private views on site. And this designation will not change that. So just want to be very specific about that. So again, if it is designated as a landmark, the views from even the namesake of the home are not protected, and that any kind of environmental review that's associated with any of the redevelopment projects of adjacent parcels we do the same level of review. So just because there's a landmark, should you decide to designate this as a landmark, it's not going to change the review process for any other development around the site, because this home is still on the historic inventory list, and therefore all of the parcels are subject to project compatibility, which I'm going to get to next. So anytime a project is proposed in the city of Santa Barbara and there is discretionary review required, every design review board has to make project compatibility findings. In the case of any neighbor, if it's not on the historic inventories list or not a historic resource, it would go to single family design board. And that board is tasked with project compatibility findings. So all they're doing is looking at the proposed project and determining if that development, that proposal is compatible with neighboring structures. So again, it doesn't, whether this property is historic or not, it all goes through the same review. The property, as I mentioned, is on the historic inventories, resources inventory, and new development will require compatibility findings. So again, what we are asking for your task today is, and just to acknowledge that on June 8th of this year, the Historic Landmarks Commission held a public hearing to consider designation of Casa de Cuatro Vistas as a landmark. At that meeting, a public notice, a mailed notice was sent, and just similarly to today's council meeting, a mailed notice was also sent out, and we received public comment. The HLC voted 6-1 in favor of adopting a resolution recommending that the City Council designate this property as a city landmark. And with Commissioner Lenvik opposing, as he thought that the changes made to it was only worthy of a structure of merit designation. I just want to point out that we have behind me is Chair Anthony Grumbine of the Historic Landmarks Commission, who is here to answer any of your questions about the HLC's recommendation. I also want to point out that we have the owners, the McDonoughs here, as well as Fermina Murray, who submitted the application on behalf of the McDonoughs, and they too can answer any questions about the project. And with that, that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I can't help it. I couldn't get away from what the subscriber list must have looked like for Concrete Magazine. That it was getting to me. Are there questions from council? Okay. If not, we will go to public comment. And I have some speaker slips here. I'm going to apologize in advance for Yadzia McDonough. Is that close? And you have 3 minutes at the podium, please.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Mayor Rouse and City Council members, thank you for this time to speak. Emmett and I bought our home in Santa Barbara in 1996 when we moved here from San Juan Capistrano. We chose Santa Barbara because it's a beautiful city with a rich architectural heritage, and we love it here. Recently, we had dinner at an El Paseo restaurant. We sat outside, directly under the arcade that was designed by Carlton M. Winslow. Then we went across the street to the Libera Theater for a performance there. These historic buildings are very special, and they deserve to be preserved for future generations to enjoy. Our home was designed by Carlton Winslow in the Spanish colonial revival style, which is such a distinctive feature of Santa Barbara. It is worth preserving, and so too is the mid-century modern studio. We have maintained all the buildings to the best of our ability, but at some point this home may have new owners. Many homes in Santa Barbara, particularly if they have ocean or mountain views, are being bought to be torn down and replaced by larger, typically two-story properties. I don't want that to happen to this house. Thank you for considering our request to landmark historic property.
Thank you. Next speaker is Emmett McDonough.
Takes me a moment. Good afternoon. Thank you for considering our house for historic landmark status. Before we moved here, we lived in San Juan Capistrano for 16 years in a historic Spanish colonial revival house built in 1923. When we left, it was torn down. We bought our house from a noted architect, Carlton Winslow. My wife and I are history majors. Historical authenticity is important to us. Our house is not a copy of one. It's an original, authentic Spanish colonial revival house, built in 1919. Carlton Winslow centered our house for mountain and ocean views. He built it with revolutionary architectural elements and style. We hope to keep it within our family, but I think we all know how hard that is in Santa Barbara. If we must sell it, and there's no historical landmark, given its 2.5 acres, it being within the city limits, being on top of the Riviera, having ocean and mountain views, I think the new owner will tear it down to build a much larger house to take advantage of the 2.5 acre parcel and other views. I don't want to see that happen. Please protect it for our city and for the history of Santa Barbara. As to the mid-century modern studio, I think it's an architectural masterpiece within the Oak Grove. It's not a copy. It's an original mid-century modern structure. There's a lot of copies being built now, but it's a rarity, a rare thing for Santa Barbara. Please protect this architecture for our city and for the history of Santa Barbara. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker will be Fermina Murray.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse and council members. As most of you know, I am a local historian and former member of the HLC for 12 years. I am delighted to have volunteered my service to prepare the landmark designation before you. With superb collaboration from Nicole Hernandez and great support from Mr. and Mrs. McDonough, the landmark nomination received rigorous review and approval by the HLC on June 8th. The beauty, architectural craftsmanship, and historical integrity of this property, designed by Master Architect Carlton Winslow Sr., speak for itself. For 103 years, only two non-contributing, meaning non-historic small additions were done to the main house, and they are located at the rear of the building. The other two additions done in 1955, as Ellen showed, were compatible changes that over the years have gained their own historical merit and are contributing elements to the original house. That's the landmark. Most importantly, Casa de Cuatro Vistas, like other landmarks, is associated with the lives of citizens whose contributions to real estate development, arts, culture, education, and music in Santa Barbara are gifts that continue on giving and enriching life in our community, such as the large collection of Asian art and contemporary Mexican art donated by Mrs. Campbell and Mr. and Mrs. Helms to the Art Museum, rare books and materials given to the UCSB Library, and the legacy of music professor Dr. Gillespie that his former students continue to perform. I extend my sincere appreciation to the McDonoughs for their stewardship of the property, to Nicole and the HLC, and especially to you, Mayor and Council members. The best of the past does not preserve itself. As you have done for the AME Church and La Casa de la Raza, landmarks require your approval to make them a reality for everyone to learn and celebrate the collective and diverse histories of of this magnificent city of Santa Barbara. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And the final speaker will be Janet McGinnis. There won't be Janet McGinnis. All right, do we have anybody online to speak, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have Sheila Lodge. Sheila Lodge, please go ahead.
Thank you, and hello, Mayor Rouse and council members. I am Sheila Lodge. For 50 years, I've lived near 1201 Los Alturas Road, but I visited this property for the first time around 1950 when a family friend, a gardener for the estate, took me on a tour of the grounds. At the time, the owner was Ina Campbell, one of the several distinguished people who have lived in this home. It was only when I read the historic resource report on this building that I discovered why Campbell Hall at UCSB is named as it is, and the Campbell Bridge at the Santa Barbara Botanic Garden. It was because of the generous support of the Campbells for those institutions. And has been mentioned, she made a major gift of works of East Asian art to the Santa Barbara Museum of Art, which was the basis for the museum's Asian collection. There were other distinguished owners that you've heard about, the Helmses, the Gillespies, and the noted architects who designed the buildings. The main house is screened by the very handsome trees, but much of what has been described as a symphony of different types of Santa Barbara sandstone work is easily visible from the street. This neighborhood is rich with historic resources. 7 houses away from 1201 to the east is 931 Los Alturas, named a city landmark in 2011, I believe. 2 houses away on the west is 111 Mission Ridge, built in 1915. And a bit further away is 1041 Mission Bridge Road, built in 1928. Both houses are on the historic inventory list. These historic resources enrich the area culturally and add diversity. The buildings, the buildings at 1201 Tourists were designed by architects. Distinguished residents made significant contributions to Santa Barbara's cultural life. It retains its historic integrity, and it deserves to be so. Thank you.
Ms. Lodge, I believe we lost the signal. Do you have further comment? You done? Okay, very good. Very good. Then, are there any other further comments online?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, very good. We will go to council comments. Back to council, be Ms. Snedden and then Michael Jordan after that.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. So what a gem this property is. I have to say it's not just the buildings, but the stonework and the trees, the inhabitants, all contributing to this as a cultural and historic landmark. It's not any one factor, but the collective of all of those. I found the historic significance report compelling. It's so detailed, and with the photographs and the multiple histories in there. I support the findings of the HLC, particularly criteria 2 and 3 in section 30.157.025. I'd be proud to make the motion to designate Casa de Cuatro Vistos as a landmark. Just in addition to that, the contributions of Ina Campbell, we have Campbell Hall, the Campbell Bridge, contributions to the Santa Barbara Museum of Art, her celebration of pagodas and Japanese art, and that influence that we see at the Botanic Gardens and elsewhere that she brought to the area. The McKinley and Francis Helm continued the tradition of contributing to the arts of Mexico and that history too, and even Hammond's Beach, and then continuing contributions to UCSB. For criteria 3, this is an exemplary sample of the Spanish colonial revival style, with Winslow as the lead architect in this style, and including, it was significant, I think, the small homes movement. HLC just had a presentation from a graduate student not in the area who highlighted the significance of that particular style, which highlights that it's still relevant. It's not just a relic of the past, but is still influencing and inspiring architects today. The stonework I find particularly compelling. It's a way of not just highlighting the artwork itself, but the geology of the area. And then it's in place, and you can go all through Santa Barbara, and with the stonework that's in place, it tells you about the geology of the area too, which goes back to, 1,000 years ago in our Chumash history of a great flood that's in the oral history. So it's in some ways also in perpetuity there as stonework and artwork. It's unique not just for this time, but for the enduring work that's in the area. And then including the mid-century modern design. We have throughout Santa Barbara some really great examples of original mid-century modern architecture, which is also part of our historic fabric, not just the Spanish colonial revival. So it's unique on this property that it actually has both of those, and the trees, and the stonework, and the gardens, that it's not any one thing. And then when you add the tie-ins to El Paseo, the Lugo Adobe, the library, Museum of Natural History, and that also type of stonework and architecture that's still inspiring and held up as a sort of gems in the larger community beyond just Santa Barbara. So I want to thank you for bringing this forward and nominating this property so that we could have this thorough look at it. And I'm very happy to move the recommendation to designate Casa de Cuatro Vistos as a landmark.
And just to be clear, sorry to interrupt, but that would include adopting the resolution.
Yes, including adopting the resolution with particularly supporting criteria 2 and 3 in section 30.157.025.
All right, very good. It's been moved, and Mr. Jordan, you have a comment?
Now that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, I'll be happy to second that motion.
Thank you for that housekeeping detail. It's a comment. The floor is
I
yours.
don't mean to downplay the procedure, because I know the procedure is important, but it's always also important to hear the story that's behind a building or a lifetime. I think staff did a great job today of walking us through what is sometimes a dry history report full of details, and really make it something that resonated. And I know there's a bit of trepidation on the owner's part for their willingness to go through with this, but but what I really hear today is a love for where they live and how that building became what they live in too. So happy to support that.
Thank you. Mr. Friedman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am also supportive of this and appreciate my colleagues' comments. I just want to thank the McDonoughs for nominating this and coming today, and for really looking out for the future of Santa Barbara. And when you stated that, it's possible that the home might not stay in your family and you want to protect it from potential demolition in the future or changes, that says a lot to your commitment to the home and to the architectural history of Santa Barbara, so I appreciate that. And then also, Ms. Murray, thank you for your detailed analysis that enabled this to go forward, and just thank you for all that, and I'll be supporting the motion.
All right, very good. And yes, it's, I know that the committee's work, this process is not taken lightly, so I appreciate all the effort and the time, and appreciate the owners willing to participate as well in this process. So with that, we have a first and a second. May we have a roll call vote, please, Madam Clerk?
This is a motion by Councilmember Snedden, seconded by Councilmember Jordan for item 14 for the recommended action, including the resolution. Councilmember Snedden.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Harmon.
Yes.
Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez.
Aye.
Councilmember Jordan.
Yes.
Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez.
Yes.
Councilmember Friedman.
Yes.
And Mayor Rouse.
Aye. Very good. Motion carries unanimously. And with that, we have gone to the end of the agenda, and we have a couple of items coming up for closed session. Would you read the items, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Item 15, conference with city attorney, existing litigation, Government Code Section 54956.9 D1, as described in agenda item 15. And item 16, conference with city attorney, existing litigation, Government Code Section 54956.9 D1 as described in Agenda Item 16.
Okay, slightly out of order, but I failed to mention we have council member committee assignment reports because we will not be reporting out from the closed sessions. Wow, everybody lit up there. I'm going to assume Ms. Sneddon was first, so I'm going to go ahead with that.
I wasn't, it was
Well, too bad. Go ahead.
Okay, I have a quick one, but at the Water Commission meeting, August 18th, that is a really great commission meeting to watch if you're interested in the year-long work effort and really the great work of that department and getting a big picture of the work plans, but also our water security. So I would just recommend that one to watch if that's of interest. And then we also had a Kachuma Operations and Management Board meeting, and the takeaway from there right now is it's really dry, and we're moving into critical fire seasons, and they may be doing control burns through the county to try and mitigate the runoff.
Very good, Mr. Friedman.
I too attended the Water Commission meeting and fully concur with my colleagues' comments. It's a really informative meeting. I learned a lot that day, and it was a good dialogue. It was a workshop type of dialogue that went back and forth with questions. So there's a lot going on there, and there's a lot that goes into every drop of water that we get in our system. And then also, we met with the Long Range Development Oversight Committee and are continuing to move forward on reform projects and getting to some of the heavier ones now, bigger lift, but it was a very productive meeting and in terms of the customer service that staff is providing and understanding where we're going in the future. So I appreciate all the work that staff put into that.
Thank you, Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended the West Side School Supply giveaway that was put together by the Salvation Army at the Boys and Girls Club on the West Side, and Councilmember Alejandra Gutierrez was very key to that. She helped organize that, and thank you for that. And San Marcos High School had a welcome back event at La Cumbre Junior High to welcome all the neighborhood incoming high schoolers, and it was great to see former coaches and teachers and their new principal, Dare Holdren, who was a football coach of mine, so that's really exciting for them. Let's see. I met with the downtown food and beverage committee about the. We just briefly discussed about that MIG consultant, and they voiced their opinions about paying for rent for the public space. So that was an interesting discussion. Attended the Arts Advisory Committee, and they discussed all the cultural planning documents that they're going to revise and give us an update on, and also the closure of the Museum of Contemporary Art and what the future of that space is going to be like. Met with the Chamber of Commerce and attended the ribbon cutting for the Santa Barbara State Law and Elder Planning, which is a really important service for the community. And then attended the Senator Limon's Nonprofit Organization of the Year, and that went to Mother's Helpers, which is a great nonprofit that gives away free children clothing, toys, anything you need as a new mother, they give it away for free. So it's a really great resource in our community. And then attended a downtown Santa Barbara meeting with the parade organizers to discuss what the future of State Street and those parades are going to be like. And we decided to have a follow-up meeting with police and fire so they can have their opinions heard about the whole matter. And that's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's like no general public comment, and I'm going to report out. It's like a lotto day, isn't it? So, Oscar mentioned we had a ad hoc subcommittee get together yesterday with parade participants. So I guess I just want to keep that process out there in the public eye or the council eye. We have a follow-up meeting, just ourselves, coming up on the 1st with staff that will also include law enforcement, and then a group law enforcement meeting followed up right after that. And I think we're on target for the middle of September return to council with recommendations on portability, parade locations, rent, and design requirements. So just so you know, it's still on track. What I really wanted to just report out on is I caught most of the Architectural Board of Review meeting yesterday afternoon because there were either 3 or 4 projects on there, all in different stages of either concept review or moving further along in the process. Rental housing around the city that comprised about 200 units. And that's none of those included the 100+ units down on East Mason Street in the Funk Zone. So it just continues to reinforce my dread that there's too much tension in that process, that the design process is working on more than design, the development process is working more on development than actually getting to the type of housing we need. And I know we've had conversations, and Rebecca stepped out for a moment, but you know, we have a set of suggestions coming on FARs that not are FARs but are built into the AUD program, on higher inclusionary percentage than what we offer now. Talking about do we still want to give community benefit automatic designation to any rental housing property, or should we be having a higher standard? And then similar to what's taking place with the Housing Authority at the Carrillo Castillo lot, a structured way for incentives to be offered that is actually strays into market rate, but at the very low part of market rate, where it's just getting out of what we call the inclusionary rates right now. And the reason I bring all those up is because while we're sitting here not accomplishing any of those, hundreds of units are working their way through the process. And as if there were 200 units yesterday that were talked about, there's only 30 of those in what we would call inclusionary or beneficial rental units. The rest are market rates. And that continues, I think, to be way too low of a number as a result of that.
You need to be a little conscious of not going into a non-agendized item, if you don't mind, Mr.
All
Jordan.
right. Well, that's my report out of both what happened and my feelings on that. So.
Okay. Ms. Harmon, do you have a comment as you seem to want the floor?
Hi.
Okay, with that, we stand adjourned. Thank you.